Maria had been working at the Grand Pearl Hotel for almost 4 years. Every day she woke up early, put on her neat maid's uniform, tied her hair back, and walked to the hotel with a sense of quiet discipline. The work was tiring. Scrubbing floors, changing heavy bed sheets, cleaning bathrooms. But she was grateful to have a stable job. She had learned to keep a smile on her face even when guests were rude or demanding, because she believed kindness was part of her duty. That Tuesday, morning began like any other. The sun was bright outside, and the lobby was busy with travelers checking in and out. Maria was walking through the lobby carrying a basket of fresh towels when she noticed a man standing near the front entrance. He wasn't dressed like most of the wealthy guests she saw every day. His jeans were slightly faded, and his shirt was plain, with the sleeves rolled up. He had a small travel bag slung over his shoulder, the kind that could only fit a few days' worth of clothes. His shoes looked comfortable but not expensive. Maria's first thought was that he must be a budget traveler, maybe here for just one night. But there was something different about him. He wasn't in a rush like the business travelers who were always checking their watches. He wasn't taking selfies like the tourists who came in groups. He was simply looking around with a calm, observant gaze, as if he was studying the hotel's details, the paintings on the walls, the fresh flowers at the reception desk, the polished marble floor. As Maria passed him, he turned toward her with a warm smile. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Could you tell me where the dining area is?" Maria stopped and pointed toward the far end of the lobby. "Yes, sir. Just walk past the elevators and you'll see the restaurant on your left." "Thank you," he replied, giving a small nod before walking away. She didn't think much of the interaction at first. It was part of her job to help guests find their way. Still, something about the man's tone stayed with her. Most guests simply asked questions without much emotion, but his words had a softness to them. It wasn't the politeness of someone trying to impress. It was genuine, almost as if he truly appreciated her help. Later that afternoon, Maria was cleaning the hallway outside one of the conference rooms. She saw the same man again. This time he was leaning slightly against the wall, looking at a framed photograph of the hotel from 50 years ago. When he noticed her, he stepped aside to let her mop the floor. "Sorry to be in your way," he said with a gentle chuckle. No, you're fine," Maria replied quickly. She had seen plenty of guests get irritated if a maid was working nearby, so his kindness surprised her. She continued with her work, but she couldn't help noticing how he lingered in the hallway as if the photograph truly meant something to him. After a while, he walked away without saying anything else. Over the next 2 days, Maria kept seeing him in different parts of the hotel, sometimes in the lobby, sometimes near the gardens, and once even in the laundry area, where guests usually never went. He seemed to wander everywhere, always quiet, but never lost. She wondered if he was just curious about the building, or if he was the kind of guest who enjoyed exploring every corner. On the third morning, she was carrying a stack of clean pillowcases when she turned a corner and almost bumped into him. The sudden movement caused 2 pillowcases to slip from her hands and fall to the floor. Before she could bend down, he quickly knelt and picked them up for her. "Here you go," he said, handing them back with a smile. "Thank you, sir," she replied, a little embarrassed. "No need to call me sir," he said lightly. "Just call me James." Maria gave a polite nod but didn't use his name. Hotel policy encouraged staff to address guests formally, and she didn't want to get into trouble. That night, while she was cleaning a corner table in the staff lounge, 2 other maids entered and began whispering. Maria overheard them talking about the man who keeps walking around like he owns the place. One of them joked that he might be a travel blogger secretly reviewing the hotel. Another said she thought he was a photographer because she had seen him taking a few pictures with his phone. Maria laughed softly to herself. People could be so quick to imagine stories. She still believed James was just a polite, curious guest. He didn't seem rich or famous, and he definitely didn't act like the type who would complain about small details. If anything, he blended in so well that most people might not notice him at all. But there was one thing she couldn't ignore. Whenever she saw him, he looked at everything with a kind of focus, almost as if he was making mental notes. He would glance at the arrangement of flowers, the way the staff greeted guests, the condition of the furniture. Maria thought it was unusual for someone to pay attention to those things unless they were deeply interested in hotels. Still, she didn't ask questions. In her years at the Grand Pearl, she had learned that guests had their own reasons for what they did. Some came to escape their daily lives, some came for business, and some just wanted to enjoy luxury for a short time. Whatever James's reason was, it wasn't her place to pry. One afternoon, Maria was cleaning the large glass windows in the lobby when James passed by again. This time he stopped and looked out the window with her. "Beautiful view," he said softly, gazing at the ocean waves in the distance. "Yes, it is," Maria agreed. "You must see it every day," he added. Maria smiled faintly. "I do, but most of the time I'm too busy working to really enjoy it." He gave a small, thoughtful nod, as if her words meant more to him than she realized. Then he simply said, "I understand," and walked away. That night, Maria lay in bed thinking about the day. She didn't usually think about guests after work. She had her own life to manage, with bills to pay and groceries to buy. But something about James's calm, respectful way of speaking stayed in her mind. She told herself it was just because he was different from the usual guests. But deep down, she felt there was something more to him, something she couldn't quite name. And so, without realizing it, she began to look for him whenever she passed through the lobby or the hallways. Not because she was curious about his personal life, but because seeing him somehow made her day feel lighter. He was just a guest, she reminded herself, a kind, polite guest. At least that's what she thought. The next morning, Maria arrived at the hotel a little earlier than usual. She liked having a few quiet minutes before the real rush of the day began. The lobby was still calm, the sunlight just beginning to spill through the tall glass windows. She was arranging a set of fresh towels on her cleaning cart when she noticed James walking through the lobby. He wasn't in a hurry, as always. Instead, he strolled slowly, glancing at the flower arrangements and the polished marble floor, like someone who truly noticed the small things. When he saw her, he smiled in that same warm, genuine way. "Good morning," he said. Maria returned the smile. "Good morning, sir." "You're here early," he observed. "I start early every day," she replied, adjusting the towels on her cart. "That's how the hotel stays ready before all the guests wake up." James chuckled softly. "Well, it looks like you're doing a great job. Everything here always looks perfect." His words caught her by surprise. Most guests never commented on the staff's work unless something went wrong. She simply nodded, not wanting to seem too touched by the compliment, though it warmed her heart more than she expected. Later that morning, she was assigned to clean the main lounge area. It was a spacious place with soft chairs, shelves of books, and large windows overlooking the garden. As she dusted the shelves, she saw James sitting in one of the chairs, quietly reading a newspaper. He didn't disturb her, but every now and then he looked up, glancing toward the garden as if lost in thought. When she moved to the other side of the room, she noticed he had placed his coffee cup on the edge of the table. Without saying anything, she walked over, gently moved it to the center, and placed a coaster under it. James looked at her, a little surprised. "Thank you," he said. "I didn't even notice I put it there." "That's all right." Maria replied politely. Part of my job is to notice little things before they cause a mess. He nodded thoughtfully, and for a moment, Maria felt as though he was studying her in the same way he studied the hotel, quietly, without judgment, but with deep attention. Over the next few days, their paths crossed often. Once, she saw him, in the hotel garden, watching the gardeners plant fresh flowers. Another time, she found him in the library room, flipping through a book about hotel design. He never acted as if he didn't belong in those places. Instead, he moved with a natural ease, as though he was at home anywhere in the building. One afternoon, Maria was carrying a large laundry bag when she accidentally dropped a folded sheet on the floor. Before she could bend down, James, who had been walking past, immediately picked it up and handed it to her. "You're always helping." "Me?" she said with a small laugh. He shrugged lightly. "It's just the right thing to do." There was something disarming about his simplicity. Maria had dealt with guests who refused to even hold a door for staff, and here was a man who didn't hesitate to help pick up laundry from the floor. That evening, Maria overheard two receptionists talking quietly at the front desk. One said, "I can't figure him out. He's been here for days, but no one remembers checking him in. And he doesn't seem to have a reservation in the system." The other replied, "Maybe he's some kind of inspector, or someone from the head office. He's always walking around and looking at everything." Maria didn't say anything, but their words stayed in her mind. She remembered how James seemed to notice every detail in the hotel, the staff uniforms, the furniture, the service. She also remembered how he never seemed to be in a hurry, like someone who had all the time in the world. The next day, she saw him again near the elevators. He was talking to the head chef, and they seemed to be discussing the menu. James nodded, as the chef explained something, occasionally asking a question. Maria found it unusual for a guest to be so interested in the kitchen's work, but she didn't let her curiosity show. That afternoon, while cleaning a hallway near the suites, she crossed paths with him once more. He was carrying a notebook in his hand, and when she glanced at it, she thought she saw some sketches of the hotel's layout. "Do you draw?" she asked, without thinking. James looked at his notebook, then back at her with a small smile. "Sometimes. It helps me remember things." Maria wanted to ask more, but she reminded herself that it wasn't professional to pry into guests' personal matters. Still, she couldn't help but wonder, why would a guest need sketches of the hotel? Later that evening, as she was cleaning near the reception, James walked past and handed her a small paper cup. "Here," he said. "You've been working hard? I thought you could use some tea." Maria hesitated for a moment before accepting it. "Thank you," she said softly. "It's no trouble," James replied, and then he walked away as casually as if they had been friends for years. That night, Maria told her sister about him over the phone. "He's not like the usual guests," she said. "He's different. Quiet, polite, always paying attention to everything. I can't figure him out." Her sister laughed. "Maybe he's secretly famous." Maria smiled but shook her head. "No, he doesn't act like someone famous. He acts like he belongs here in some way I can't explain." The following morning, Maria was dusting the furniture in the lobby when James approached her again. "I hope you don't mind." "Me saying this?" he began. "But I've noticed you always treat everyone here with respect. Even when you're busy or tired, you still smile. That's rare." His words caught her off guard. She had never thought much about her manner. It was simply how she had been raised. "I believe everyone should be treated kindly," she said simply. "That's a good way to live," he replied. "And it doesn't go unnoticed." Before Maria could respond, he excused himself and walked toward the elevators. She stood there, for a moment, wondering why his words felt so meaningful. In the days that followed, Maria found herself looking forward to these small encounters. They were brief, but they made the long hours of work feel lighter. She didn't know who James really was, but she knew he was someone who noticed people, not just things. And though she still believed he was just a guest, there was a small, quiet part of her that sensed there might be more to his presence than she realized. It was a Thursday afternoon when Maria received a task that she usually didn't get. The housekeeping supervisor came to her while she was folding towels and said, "Maria, we need you to clean the private conference room on the top floor. They'll have a meeting there later, so it needs to be spotless." Maria nodded, even though she knew the private conference room wasn't like the usual meeting spaces. It was reserved for special events, important clients, VIP gatherings, and sometimes even board meetings. She had never been assigned to it before, and she felt a small spark of curiosity. She gathered her cleaning supplies and took the service elevator up to the top floor. The hallway was quieter there, almost too quiet compared to the busy noise of the lobby. The carpet felt softer under her shoes, and the walls were decorated with framed photos of the hotel's history, old black and white pictures of its opening day, photos of the first staff members, and images of famous guests who had stayed there over the years. When she reached the conference room, she gently pushed the door open. The room was spacious, with a long table in the center and large windows showing a beautiful view of the ocean. She took a deep breath and got to work, dusting the furniture, wiping the table, and making sure the chairs were perfectly lined up. As she was polishing the glass surface of the table, the sound of voices came from the hallway. She thought the meeting was scheduled for later, but before she could step out, the door opened and several people walked in. They were dressed in sharp suits, holding folders and tablets. Maria immediately stepped to the side, planning to quietly finish her work and leave. But then her eyes fell on the person walking in last, and her breath caught for a moment. It was James. He wasn't wearing his casual clothes this time. He had on a dark suit that fit him perfectly, and his hair was neatly combed. The relaxed traveler she thought she knew was gone. In his place stood someone who carried himself with quiet authority. The others in the room seemed to treat him with a great deal of respect. He walked to the head of the table without hesitation, and the moment he sat down, the conversation began. Maria kept her head down and continued wiping the table in the far corner, trying not to draw attention to herself. Still, she couldn't help overhearing parts of their discussion. "I've reviewed the reports from all departments," one man said. "Guest satisfaction has increased by 4% this quarter." "That's good, but I think we can do better," James replied in a calm but confident voice. "We need to focus on the guest experience, not just the numbers. The staff here work hard, but some areas need improvement. Maintenance, for example. I saw a loose railing in the garden yesterday. Small details like that matter." Maria froze for a second. He had noticed the loose railing. She had seen it too, but it surprised her that he would care enough to mention it. Another person at the table spoke up. "About the renovation plans. Should we go ahead with replacing the lounge furniture this year or wait until next budget?" James tapped his pen against the table thoughtfully. "We go ahead this year. Comfort is part of the first impression, and this lounge is the heart of the hotel." Maria felt like she had stepped into a completely different world. She realized these weren't casual conversations. This was the kind of talk only someone in charge would have. At that moment, a woman entered and placed a stack of documents in front of James. He began flipping through them, asking questions about staffing schedules, kitchen efficiency, and upcoming events. Maria finished her work as quietly as she could, but she found her eyes drawn to James again and again. This wasn't the polite, wandering guest she had met in the hallways. This was a man who clearly understood the hotel inside and out, someone whose opinion carried weight with every person in the room. Just as she was about to leave, she heard him say something that made her pause at the door. "I also want to discuss employee recognition," he said. "It's important we acknowledge the hard work of staff members, especially those in housekeeping and maintenance. They often go unnoticed, but without them, the hotel cannot run." Maria's heart gave a small, unexpected jump. She didn't know why, but the sincerity in his voice made her chest feel warm. One of the managers replied, "We can prepare a list of staff who've been performing exceptionally well this quarter." "Good," James said, nodding, "and I have a few names in mind already." Maria didn't stay to hear the rest. She quietly slipped out of the room and closed the door behind her. As she walked down the hallway, her mind was spinning. She couldn't shake the image of James in that suit, speaking with authority, making decisions that affected the entire hotel. Was he a high-level manager? Someone from the owner's group? Or could it be something even more important? Back in the housekeeping area, one of her co-workers noticed her distracted look. "Everything all right?" the woman asked. Maria hesitated before answering. I think I saw a different side of someone I thought I knew." Her co-worker raised an eyebrow but didn't press for details. That night, Maria lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the first time she had seen James, casually dressed, asking for directions to the dining area. She thought about how he had helped her pick up the towels, how he noticed the beauty of the ocean view, and how he treated her with the same respect as anyone else. Now she had seen him in a meeting, speaking like the hotel was his responsibility. The two images didn't match, and yet somehow they did. The kindness was still there, even in his serious tone during the meeting. Maria realized something else, too. James wasn't just looking at the flowers, the furniture, or the walls because he was curious. He had been inspecting them, making mental notes, understanding every detail. She had no answers yet, but she had a growing feeling that James was far more than he appeared to be, and part of her couldn't wait to find out the truth. The next morning began like any other for Maria. She arrived early, put on her uniform, and checked her cleaning list for the day. But there was something different in the air. The hotel felt busier than usual, even though there weren't many guests in the lobby yet. Staff members were moving quickly, speaking in low voices, and a sense of quiet excitement seemed to run through the building. While she was restocking towels in the storage room, her supervisor came in. "Maria," she said, "there's going to be an important staff meeting in the main lounge in 1 hour. Everyone has to be there. Housekeeping, kitchen staff, reception, everyone. So finish your current task and come straight down." Maria was surprised. All staff meetings didn't happen often. Usually management spoke only to department heads, who then passed on the information. If they were calling everyone together, it had to be something big. She finished her work quickly and made her way to the lounge. The room had been cleared of most furniture to make space for all the employees. People stood in small groups, talking quietly and guessing what the meeting might be about. Some thought it was about a new policy, others whispered about renovations, and a few guessed it might be about a change in management. Maria found a spot near the back. She liked to observe without drawing attention to herself. She glanced around looking for James but didn't see him anywhere. The hotel manager, a tall man in a crisp suit, stepped forward and called for everyone's attention. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming on such short notice. We've gathered you all here today because we have a very special announcement to make." The room fell silent. "As you know," the manager continued, "the Grand Pearl Hotel has always prided itself on not just luxury, but on the dedication and hard work of its staff. Recently, there has been a change in ownership, and we are fortunate to have someone who deeply values both the guests and the people who make this hotel run." Maria felt her heart beat a little faster. A change in ownership? That explained the strange atmosphere and the meeting. The manager smiled and said, "It is my great honor to introduce to you the new owner of the Grand Pearl Hotel." He turned toward the side entrance, and in that moment, Maria's breath caught in her throat. Walking into the lounge, dressed neatly but without the formality of a full suit, was James. For a second, Maria thought she was imagining it. But the way every manager, chef, and receptionist turned toward him with respect, made it clear this was real. James walked to the front, his expression warm but confident, and shook the manager's hand before facing the entire staff. "Good morning," he began, his voice carrying easily across the room. "I know most of you don't know me yet, at least not in this way. Over the past week, I've been here as just another guest. I wanted to see the hotel from your perspective, to understand the daily work, the challenges and the strengths of this place." Maria felt a wave of shock wash over her. All those times she had seen him wandering the halls, looking at flowers, talking to staff. It wasn't random. He had been observing, learning, and experiencing the hotel as quietly as possible. "Want you to know," James continued, "that I've been deeply impressed. This hotel is more than its walls and decor. It's the people who make it alive. From the chefs to the front desk, from the gardeners to the housekeeping staff, every role here matters." His eyes swept across the room, and for the briefest moment, they rested on Maria. She felt as though the rest of the room faded for a second. "I also want to recognize a few people whose kindness and dedication stood out to me," he said. "Not because they were trying to impress me, but because that's who they are every day. One of those people is Maria, from housekeeping." Maria froze. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. She felt her face warm as James continued. "When I first arrived, Maria greeted me with a smile and gave me directions without a hint of impatience. Over the next few days, I saw her working hard, paying attention to details, and treating every guest with the same respect, no matter who they were. That kind of attitude is exactly what I want this hotel to represent." Maria didn't know what to do. She managed a small, shy smile and nodded slightly. The other staff members clapped, and she could hear a few murmured congratulations from the people standing near her. James went on to talk about his plans for the hotel, improving facilities, adding new staff benefits, and ensuring that everyone felt valued. His words weren't just promises. There was a sincerity in his tone that made people believe him. By the time the meeting ended, there was a buzz of energy in the air. People seemed hopeful, even excited about the changes to come. As the crowd began to disperse, Maria turned to leave quietly, but she heard a voice call her name. She looked up to see James walking toward her. Up close, his expression was exactly as she remembered, kind and genuine, but now there was an added weight of authority behind it. "Maria," he said, stopping in front of her, "I just wanted to thank you personally. I meant every word I said in there." She found her voice and replied softly, "I didn't know. I never guessed you were the owner." "That's the point," he said with a small smile. "When people know you're in charge, they treat you differently. I wanted to see the real side of this place, and people like you showed me exactly why I made the right choice in buying it." Maria felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. She had been speaking to the owner of the entire hotel as if he were just another guest, and yet she didn't regret it. She had been herself the whole time, and somehow that had been enough. James extended his hand, and Maria shook it, feeling the firm but friendly grip. "Keep doing what you're doing," he said. "You make a bigger difference than you realize." Hentisadi. He walked away to speak to other staff members. Maria stood still for a moment, letting it all sink in. The man she thought was just a quiet, polite traveler was actually the person who owned the entire place. But more than that, he was someone who valued kindness and hard work, not just titles or appearances. As she returned to her duties that day, Maria moved with a new sense of confidence. She realized that the way she treated people mattered, even when no one was watching. And now she knew for certain it could change her life in ways she never expected. The rest of that day felt different for Maria. She went about her work as usual, changing bed sheets, polishing mirrors, and vacuuming carpets, but her mind kept returning to the morning's meeting. Every time she passed through the lobby or one of the hallways, She wondered if she might see James again. She still couldn't quite believe it. The man who had quietly helped her pick up laundry, who had stopped to admire the ocean view with her, who had asked for the dining area like any ordinary guest, he owned the entire Grand Pearl Hotel. But what stayed with her even more than that fact was the way he had spoken about her in front of everyone. He hadn't praised her because of her position or for something dramatic. He had noticed her small actions, the everyday kindness she offered without expecting anything in return. It made her realize that even the simplest gestures could be seen, even if you didn't know who was watching. Later in the afternoon, Maria was cleaning the hallway near the executive offices when she saw James coming toward her. He wasn't surrounded by managers or other staff this time. He was alone, holding a cup of coffee. When he reached her, he slowed down. "Hi, Maria," he said in the same friendly tone he'd always used, as if nothing had changed between them. "Good afternoon, sir," she replied, still feeling a little shy. "I thought we could have a quick chat," he said, glancing toward a small sitting area nearby. "If you have a moment." Maria hesitated. Her cart was parked in the hallway, and technically she was on the clock, but something told her it was fine. She nodded, and they both took seats in the corner chairs. For a moment, James simply sipped his coffee. Then he looked at her with that same thoughtful expression she had noticed the very first time they met. "I wanted to tell you more about why I bought this hotel," he began. "I've stayed in a lot of hotels, some more luxurious than this one, some less. But I've learned something. It's not the chandeliers or the expensive furniture that make a place memorable. It's the people." Maria listened quietly, her hands resting in her lap. "When I decided to purchase the Grand Pearl," he continued, "I didn't want to walk in as the owner right away. I wanted to see the truth of how things worked here, and how people treated guests when they didn't know someone was important. That's when I met you." Maria felt her cheeks warm. "I was just doing my job," she said softly. "Yes," he replied with a small smile, "but you did it with sincerity. That's rare. I watched how you helped other guests, too. Always, with the same respect. That's what I want for this hotel. I want it to be a place where kindness is part of the atmosphere, not just service for show." She didn't quite know how to respond. Compliments from guests were one thing, but hearing this from the person who now owned the hotel made her feel both proud and humbled. James went on. "I started my career at the bottom, too. My first job was cleaning rooms in a small family-run inn. I know how hard the work can be and how easy it is for people to overlook it. That's why I'll always make sure staff like you are recognized." Maria's eyes widened slightly. "You worked in housekeeping?" He nodded. "Yes, and I remember how it felt when someone noticed my effort. It made me want to do even better. That's why I spoke about you this morning, because you deserve to know you're making a difference." They sat in a comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the hotel faint in the background. Finally, Maria said, I think that's why this hotel feels different from others. Maybe it's because you see people for who they are, not just what they do." James's smile deepened, and he stood up. "That's what I hope, and I hope you'll keep being yourself, Maria. The guests may not always say it, but I promise, they notice." She stood too, and as they shook hands, she realized something important. Respect wasn't about titles, uniforms, or positions. It was about treating others well, no matter who they were. Over the next few weeks, changes began to happen in the hotel. Staff were given better schedules to allow for more rest between shifts. New equipment was brought in to make cleaning tasks easier. There was even a monthly recognition program where outstanding employees were celebrated. Maria was named in the first group of honorees, receiving a small bonus and a framed certificate that she proudly showed to her family. Every now and then, James would stop by to talk with her or other staff members, asking about their work and their lives. He didn't just give orders, He listened, and every time Maria saw him, she was reminded of the first days when she thought he was just another guest wandering the halls. One evening, as she was finishing her shift, she stepped into the lobby and saw him standing by the large windows, looking out at the ocean just as they had before. She walked over. "Beautiful view," she said, echoing his own words from that day. He turned and smiled. "It is. And I'm glad you still take a moment to notice it." Maria glanced at the waves in the distance. "I used to walk past it without thinking, but now I remember that even in a busy day, it's worth pausing for something beautiful." James nodded. "That's a good way to live, at work and outside of it." As she left the hotel that night, Maria felt lighter somehow. She had learned that the world could surprise you when you least expected it. A stranger could turn out to be someone with the power to change your life, and the smallest acts, offering directions, sharing a smile, picking up a dropped towel, could matter more than you ever realized. From then on, she carried herself with quiet confidence, not because she wanted recognition, but because she knew that every person she met could be more than they seemed. And she promised herself that no matter who they were, she would treat them with the same kindness she had shown James before she knew his name or his title.